This is my round 2 game from last night. I was playing a 1900 rated player. I think around there was his USCF from Kentucky. And he started with d4. I went knight f6, knight f3, g6, g3. He was spending a little bit of time in the opening, so I wasn't sure how well he knew this one or how familiar he was with these lines, but I kind of went for my usual setup here with d6. Now he played c4. I went c5. There's lots of options for black other than this one. There's also knight c6 here. There's knight d7, c6, bishop f5, lots of moves, of course. But I decided to go c5. I just thought like this felt like a pretty sharp choice for this situation. So I wanted to try this one out. I've played this a couple times before. This is what Going Jones recommends in his Chessable course as well. Though I'm not sure if this is like the best. It's definitely very playable, but I feel like black has other options as well. So it's not the only way to play. He went knight c3, knight c6, d5, knight a5, knight d2. This is all kind of normal, defending the pawn, e6. And yeah, I'm still in book here. Black is just trying to take on d5 at some point, play for b5. So he went queen c2. I went rook e8. Now the idea is to take and play b5. So for example, if b3, I would like to play b3. I think this is the main move. The theory continues takes b5 like this. Because if knight takes b5, rook takes e2. I think black is kind of happy. The rook is very active. We got bishop a6 coming, bishop f5, stuff like that. So I think this is pretty reasonable. So yeah, white played rook e1 instead of b3, which I think is a little bit slow. And here I decided to take on d5. I was definitely expecting pawn takes, and then I wasn't sure exactly if I was going to go bishop d7 here, or rook b8 is also possible, or even bishop f5 first, kind of provoking e4, and then bishop back to d7. This is an interesting idea because then it stops white from being able to put their knights on this square, and then black still gets the b5, b4 counterplay, so I was kind of considering this as well. Actually wasn't totally sure, but somewhat to my surprise, he took with the knight here, which I was actually very happy to see. I mean, it looks natural because it's like white is keeping this square as an outpost, but it actually frees up black's position because now I get the e6 square for the bishop, and I can bring my knight back to c6 and start hitting d4 and b4. So I was very happy with my idea here. I played bishop f5, hitting the queen. And okay, it's a big tempo, so white doesn't want to allow this one. So he goes e4, and then bishop e6. And so my point was by inducing this move, now he can never control the d4 square, so I can bring the knight back to c6 and d4. And at some point, I might be interested in just trading and playing a kind of Benoni position. And yeah, currently I'm actually threatening to win a pawn by taking twice on d5, because the rook on e1 is hanging. So that's kind of a serious threat. Yeah, so he played knight e3, which I'm not sure about. At this point, I definitely felt like my position is quite good, because white has not the best development here. Like, nice structure, he has his d5 square, and my pawn on d6 is weak, but the development is still lacking. So I started with knight c6. I think this is very logical, just to threaten some jumps. He went knight f1, which I didn't understand fully. I think the idea was to try to get the bishop out. And yeah, I was thinking about a couple things here. I ended up playing knight d4 just because I didn't really see a good reason to delay this move. So I started with this one. Queen d1 was played, which made sense. And yeah, then I was thinking about lots of stuff here, like queen d7, bishop h3, this kind of plan, or maybe some b5 idea. Eventually I started with h5, just to control the g4 square, like maybe think about knight g4 at some point, but also to try and play h4, h3 myself. I thought white should maybe play h3 here. He ends up going h4, which I think is I don't know, to me it felt inaccurate because it gives up the g4 square. And now I felt pretty good about this position. So after a bit of a thought, I decided to go rook b8. Because I felt like it's basically a Benoni. I got this like Benoni structure. I should be playing on the queen side. I have a very strong bishop on g7 that's pointing this way. White's bishop on c1 has a hard time developing. So this felt very logical to me. And at some point I realized, White's going to have to put the knight back on d5, and then I can take, and we can get this kind of Benoni type of structure where black is a really good version because you already got the b5 in, the queenside counterplay is going, the knight on d4 is obviously very strong, and in general black is very happy to give up the bishop for a knight in these positions because the remaining minor pieces are kind of in black's favor, and the knights are very nicely coordinated here. So instead white played a4, I think just kind of preventing b5, but weakening some squares. I decided to go queen b6 to take advantage and look for either queen b3 or knight b3. Both looked actually kind of annoying for white, especially if I can take the dark squared bishop, then my bishop would be very, very strong on the diagonal. So white played rook a3, covering this one, which, okay, I thought was reasonable. I continued with a6, just improving my position, setting up b5 in the future. I thought maybe white should play a5 here and then do something like this. Eventually I would break with b6 and try to put pressure on the b file. And okay, we get like kind of very fighting Benoni, but yeah, I still feel like black's position is kind of nice, right? With this knight on d4, it feels very active. But here I think white started to go a bit wrong. He went knight d2 back, which I felt like what maybe was needed, but problem is now the bishop is really, like the bishop needed to get out. So I really thought like a5 and bishop d2, bishop c3. That was the way to play for white. Just get the bishop out. Here after knight d2, now it seems like, okay, white is just way behind in development. I continued queen c7. Just like simple move, my queen kind of did its job on the b file. I created some weaknesses, and now I want to go b5 and open things up. And here white played knight d5, which I felt like at some point, yeah, had to happen. And yeah, I liked my decision here. Just bishop takes d5, giving up the bishop. C takes d5, and then b5. I guess one thing I should say, I realized when white played knight d2, that the idea was to play knight d5, take with the c pawn, and put the knight on c4. So queen c7 was also kind of prophylactic decision, because I saw this like knight coming to c4, and I wanted to be ready for it. So yeah, so now takes b5. I think black is doing great here. We just have a perfect Benoni. Literally, we got everything. We traded off the problem bishop. We got the queenside counterplay. Knight is active, and white has no particular kingside play. So yeah, I was very happy here, and I felt like I converted it quite reasonably. So it went a b. Now I believe white started with f3 here. It's hard to really suggest stuff, but f3 defends the pawn, keeps this one protected, and prepares to activate the bishop this way. And originally what I was kind of looking for here was b4, with the idea of rook a1, knight takes d5. I was trying to make this work. Takes, here, here. Although this is not so clear right away because white does have queen d1 takes and queen a4. And white can pick up the second piece for the rook. But I was thinking even a position like this, let's say I go like queen b7, or anything here and here, queen takes d5. Here I thought, okay, I have two pawns, a rook and two pawns for the two pieces, and very active position. White's king is weak, and the pawns are pretty strong. My pieces are active, rook is active, white's pieces are passive. So I thought this is like a very interesting sacrifice, but it was all kind of moot because on b4, of course, white doesn't have to play rook a1, can go rook e3, rook a6, all this stuff. So I ended up not pushing this one because then it would give up the c4 square. So instead I started with knight d7, looking to maybe play here or here. White played bishop h3. Now knight e5 was kind of my first instinct, but then I realized knight b6 is actually just feels more harmonious because the knight controls a lot of queenside squares. I can still go b4, I can go knight c4, knight a4 as well can be included, hitting the b2 pawn one day. So I realize this is just much better for my coordination. And yeah, now it's starting to look really, really nice for black. So king g2 was played. I pushed b4. Okay, here very much hoping for now rook a1, knight takes d5. I was ready to do this. Because takes knight c2, I get this tactic. And now there's no more queen d1 because of knight e3 check with the king on g2. So I'd have to go like queen e2 takes. But then I'm just up the exchange here. My knight can either get out or I can defend it. And then it should be just winning material advantage for black. Okay, so I was hoping for that, but instead white played rook e3. And then I was thinking for a little while here, like what to do, because I definitely felt like my position is good. I thought c4 makes sense, and just right off the bat. I think actually this is what I did just right away. Just pushing this pawn and getting the queenside pawns rolling. The knight on d4 is still very strong. The pawn now wants to go to c3, c2, and so on. So this felt very good to me. White pushed f4. Okay, hard to suggest something else. And now my first thought was like c3. Yeah, I spent a little bit of time, like, I thought rook a8 also is interesting, rook a1, for example. Just pinning on the first rank looked very annoying. c3 as well, I was thinking takes, maybe knight f3, c2, queen d2, I was trying to calculate this. Or no, here there's knight c4, so c2, queen d3, I was thinking, and yeah, I wasn't totally sure. It looked good for black with the pawn on c2, but still I have to figure out maybe takes, and then I'm still going to have to figure out a way to promote the pawn. So yeah, I was thinking about that, but then I realized I can actually just go b3 and just put my knight on c2, and it's not just a fork, it's also like white's rooks are stuck. The rooks are basically trapped. Because this rook doesn't have a lot of squares. If it goes to c3, knight c2 anyway hits both rooks. And so I'm winning the exchange. And if this rook moves over, then we have the pin on the e-file still. So we've got the knight takes d5. And black just wins here. So yeah, at this point I think it's pretty much over. White played knight f1. I mean, there's no way to avoid giving up the exchange. So knight c2, queen f3, basically just trying to, sorry, he didn't go queen f3 here. I think he went e5. Oh no, not e5, sorry. It went b3. What did he do here exactly? Just 1 second. I think it was knight f1. Yeah, knight f1, knight c2. He went rook e2. I took here. And now he's got to take back with the rook. Otherwise, the e-pawn is hanging. So rook takes e3. Then, yeah, a lot of moves here. I went rook a8, just getting ready to come in. White tried e5, just trying to do something. I took. Now there's really, it's all collapsing for white. d6, there's queen c6 check, and so, yeah, black just has too much material. So game ended here. f5, rook d8, just going after this one now. Queen f3, I took here. And yeah, here my opponent resigned because black is just up way too much material. The rook is attacked. Once the rook moves, I'm just going to go c3 and just open the queen side and, yeah, erupt the exchange up a million pawns, and, yeah, it's just game over. So that was it. I felt actually really good. I felt like I played really well in this game. It was a nice Benoni, but okay, of course, the opponent definitely didn't, you know, put up the best resistance, but I still felt like I found some good moves myself. That's all you need, and they're so good. Just a little salt.